Yeah. So what I would do, since there's not too many people that's gonna be on, um, honestly, let me see here. Yeah, I could bring this part out, but I feel like yeah. Actually, I'll just continue it, guys. Yeah. So I got Kat, Wanda, Mike. Okay, so we don't have to go into breakout rooms. So we'll just do it like that. So just if you're able to comment, do so. So the first question here, do you believe the gifts of the Ruach are still active in today's assemblies? And then the next part of that question, do you believe these gifts stopped with the apostles? So you guys can kind of again comment. I'm not gonna comment, I'm not gonna commentate on it. Um, I'm just trying to just get you guys just throw your thoughts out there.
I do believe the gifts are still active. I do not believe that they died with the apostles. There's nothing new under the sun. I believe that history repeats itself, and I believe that the more that we come back into the knowledge and return to Yahuwah, that those things will be given to us. And Yahusha said that greater works than these will we do. So yeah, I do believe that they're still active.
Nice, nice. Anybody else agree, disagree? You say it in the chat. Let me know. You'd rather text it. Uh, okay, agree, agree. And have you guys actually heard this in the communities that it stopped with the apostles?
I used to actually believe that, being a Jehovah's Witness. I did. I used to believe that before coming into the truth.
Interesting.
Before coming to the truth, I didn't think that. I mean, I did think that this was still possible, that the gifts are given, but then coming into the truth, studying and assessing and asking the Most High to reveal anything that I may have been walking in that's not of Him, um, and then studying what tongues means and what Scripture states about it in Acts, and the history of also the different people in power that would have some prophetess that were unfortunately doing necromancies, speaking in tongues, but it wasn't in languages. It was more um I forgot the wording. I don't like saying the word gibberish, but other sounds that were coming out that we see in Christianity. And then when I rededicated my life to Christ before coming to the truth, I thought I was speaking in tongues. Then I realized it sounds identical to my mom's. And I asked Most High, if it's not from you, please take it away from me. And since then, I don't speak in the tongues of what most non denominational Baptists and other Christians and Pentecostals use. And then also when we understand how the Ruach Kodesh comes into our lives when we are obeying the Most High's commandments. I'm not saying like a smooth sailing because we're learning and unlearning things. I believe that's when we see more of His gifts.
Yeah, that's super interesting commentary. And it lines up with what Sister uh Chelsea said about non-denominational will have a different perspective than a Pentecostal worshiper versus a Baptist, etc. So it depends on person's religion. So I just think that's an interesting personal, experience that you share there, and for you to have the, you know, that I guess I would label it like prudence and, like caution to say like, no, y'all, like, please make sure, I'm not aligning myself with something that's not right. Um, but what I will should I ask this right now? Maybe for the question number two, actually. Um, do you recall? So, does anybody recall when you first heard about tongues, and what did you think about it at the time? And the second part is, have you ever heard tongues being spoken, and how does it or did it make you feel?
I thought tongues was I heard it pretty young actually, because I had different family members in different religions. So the Catholics never spoke in tongues. The Protestants did, because they would be the ones that would do like a whole week of fasting, prayer and fasting, and stuff like that. So it was always associated with a different group of people. Um, and I just remember thinking, I want that. But it was, you'd also see people running, like they catch the Holy Spirit supposedly, and they'd be running up and down the church or running. And you always had people laying their hands. And then you also had the prophecy. It was never just tongues. There was so much going on. Looking back, it's a bit chaotic. And it was like a show. But it was just like, okay, so these people have different experiences with God than when I go to Catholic church, no one raises their hands, and it's everything is calculated, to the minute actually. And so it was very confusing because you didn't know, okay, so where, like, the lines were blurred once again.
Mhm. Anybody else?
I
Uh,
thought there was something wrong with me. Oh, sorry.
no, good.
You can go ahead, Ak. I already spoke, so no problem. I'll speak after.
All I was basically gonna say is, when I was young and I was Baptist, I first heard tongues. That was the first time I heard somebody said they speaking in tongues, and like so I witnessed like people passing out and stuff when like they speak tongue, and then like how Chelsea said, people running around. It's a bit chaotic all over the place and stuff like that. And it was just like it was kind of scary. And I used to be like crying a lot, so it was just kind of weird being around people that did that. And I didn't know what was going on, so I was just kind of confused. But that's pretty much all I had to say about it.
Gotcha. And go ahead, Kat. I forgot I had these reasons.
Rededicating my life to the Most High before, I always saw everyone around me going to church being able to speak in tongues. And I always thought that, oh, they probably have a better relationship with the Most High than me. I'm probably, you know, some degenerate that he doesn't want to deal with or speak or be able to commune in this aspect. Then realizing a lot of the people that do speak in tongues, they don't have any fear of the Most High and a desire to keep his commandments, as you know, it's been told that it's done away with Hamashiach. And um it's just about relationship with him, and his blood has washed us clean and all that. And when looking at the different scriptures I had on, I think I did a study on this in 2023, talking about how when we operate and guard the Most High's commandments, he continues to perfect us, heart and mind. And where was it? Jeremiah 31:33. And then also Hebrews 8:10, just about the covenant, and also how he's going to be writing his commandments in our hearts and our mind. But most people that speak tongues, they disregard all of that. And I'm not saying that we all have, the straight route and everything correct and comprehending how we're supposed to keep the commandments and his feast days, but they don't even have any desire to want to comprehend their content with keeping all the pagan feast days and holidays. So when I was able to, I thought that I kind of hit the mark of, oh, finally the Most High sees me. Um, Before, it did scare me when I would see some people pass out. And then I also question why people laying their hand on someone's head and kind of like, because a few times I went up, it felt like they were pushing more instead of what was presented when you're at the seat is just prayer and then someone instantly gets it. So when I did get it, I felt off. And as I was saying, I prayed to ask for understanding. And if it isn't from him, remove it and don't allow me to have this. And then also understanding the Hebrew language and trying to better study that out. You can see the difference when it talks about tongues. It's the different languages from the other people with the apostles that were there to comprehend one another. It wasn't more so the, as I was saying, what's been presented.
Well, me growing up as a Jehovah's Witness, they didn't do all that stuff. But um, my first husband's family was Pentecostal, and so I when I went down to meet them, they asked me to go to church, and at first I was really against it because I was like, I don't do church. I don't do church. But they talked me into going, so I went. And when we were sitting in there, I noticed that his brother got up and left, and so then my husband at the time, he went behind him like 5-10 minutes later, and I didn't understand it. I thought they were just in the bathroom. I didn't know what was going to happen, but these people got to speaking and crying, and some people started flipping, and one guy was running up to another, and somebody threw themselves on the ground. Well, anyway, I got up out of there and went and sat across the street because I didn't know what was going on, and I was like, this is crazy because I wasn't used to it. um but I know that there's a scripture, and in the fellowship that I'm in, I like when we do the prayer group on Pastor Rick's channel, I know that there's some people that get up there and they be speaking in a different language, but I know that there's scripture that says if you speak in tongues, then you should have an interpreter, and if you don't, stay silent. So I don't know. That makes me think that they probably shouldn't be doing it if they don't have someone that can interpret what they're saying. So that's my take on it.
Very good, very good, very good. Commentary. Um, Definitely good. We're going over this. Does anybody want to kind of chime in on the third question? Doesn't mean you're right or wrong. It's just more like based off of what you guys have experienced, thought about, whatever the case is. Um, because I'll say like what I see in the community, what they define it as, but we're going to go over that, of course. But I just kind of wanted to see what you guys kind of thought about it. I guess your initial thoughts versus maybe something you feel like you kind of believe it is now or something like that. If you guys understand what I'm trying to ask.
I would say for me that my understanding is skewed because all my life has always been presented during an emotional moment. And, people say, I hear God saying, or, um, and, and then they'll start talking, and it's always in the obviously language I don't understand. There's repetitive words as well. Um, um, Sometimes sound like incantations, but then it doesn't. It depends on the person, and it just depends on the person, and then I've seen where sometimes the same person interprets what they said. So I wouldn't say that I actually know how to define tongues. It's just been presented as this holier than thou gift. that if you don't have it, you're just not at the mark yet, and you're just supposed to believe everyone that comes speaking a different language and maybe shaking, maybe not shaking, maybe crying, maybe not crying, and believe that the Most High sent them.
Very good, very good. I'll just kind of move on to four. With that being said, like, do you guys think that people's perception of the spiritual realm is usually influenced on limited experience in this area, or do most people derive their opinions based on how they interpret scripture? If you guys want me to explain that question a little bit more, I can, but kind of think about it. Okay, so do you think people's perception of the spiritual realm? Imagine I just read it over and I didn't explain it. Do you think people's perception of the spiritual realm is usually influenced on limited experience in this area? So that's more so saying, like, let's just say two people side by side. One person has had more spiritual experience. Let's just say they'll say, like, I've seen Yahuwah move in my life. Maybe not seeing, like, they'll say maybe they've seen some miracles, right? I know miracles can go, let's just label it, like, from a, I don't really want to say, I'll say ordinary. You can't even say ordinary because miracles are not ordinary. But like some people will say, like, well, I've had like a very spiritual experience, let's just say, of speaking in tongues, right? Um, so their perception of the spiritual realm can be much different than someone who hasn't spoken in tongues, and they may not understand and know what that feeling is like when the ruach takes over. Let's just say, for example, um, an utterance comes out, but someone who hasn't had that experience may look at the spiritual realm as less than, what I'm saying, and because they don't have those experiences, even though they can say Yah has been in their life and has done this and that, and they can see that, they believe, but they haven't been able to feel and experience as deeply as somebody else in another aspect. Even if it don't even have to just be tongues, it can just be restoration, or like like them being cleansed of sins, or even some people obviously have had deliverance performed on them from a standpoint of, like, demons being removed, and things of that nature. So you just think of the image of two people side by side. One person has more experience than the other, and from those two, you know more than likely what I'm saying is, like, there's going to be less, the person that hasn't had the same experience or has a lot of experience may or may not put uh, the spiritual realm in a box, basically, right? They may think much differently. So even if they hear certain experiences from someone that is talking about the spiritual realm, because they haven't experienced it, they may actually, you know, treat it less than, or they won't even, believe certain things, and they'll be like, oh, okay, they kind of just dismiss it. It just really depends. But I was just trying to see, just pick you guys' brain. Do you think because people haven't had certain experiences, let's just say, like, we wanted to mention the greater works, healing, gifts of healing, or whatever it may be, do you think that has kind of influenced why some people will say, oh no, the gift stopped with the apostles? Because they're not seeing those same, like, miraculous works actually being done, you know? Do you guys think, like, it's because of perception and people, like, not seeing it enough? They're like, oh well, let me put a spiritual realm in a box. Or have you guys seen more people actually define the spiritual realm by scripture, and then they're like, okay, this is what this is what this is, and then, like, they put their labels on it, like they're like, okay, this is the only way this happens, and you guys don't, what I'm saying, like, it's kind of like a different multifaceted type of question, but I'm just getting you guys to think of your experiences with people, in your life, and online especially, you could see all types of stuff. But
Well, I think I really believe that people in their finite mind, because of what we've been taught so long by religion, that people cannot see in their finite mind just how immaculate Yahuwah is. And so, like, even with reading scripture, I've seen people, like, say, oh, this can't be true because who's climbing walls? And but Yahuwah can do anything, anything that he wants. And so a lot of people get in their finite mind that this can't happen because they're seeing things from their own perception of us being humans, but not understanding how in the spiritual world, because they maybe have not experienced it. I don't believe that I've experienced um like the miracles, but I do believe what I read in text, like with Yahusha casting out demons and the and knowing that the spiritual world is real, and reading, in parts of Testament of Solomon, that there is a rule called for everything. There's a demon for everything. And also seeing in, just like the apocryphal books where and in Jubilees where it tells you that the the Nephilim, when Mestima says, "I need you to leave some on the earth so that I can exact my will over men," and it's just scriptures that line up that lets you know that they are real, that the spiritual world is real, demons are real, and a lot of things that they've told us were fake is real. And a lot of the movies that they put out, they are like sort of kind of giving you some truths, and people are like, "Oh no, that's not real, that's just fiction, that's just what they do in the movies," but they be telling you a lot of truth in those movies and stuff. So I don't know if that makes sense, but that's where I'm at.
Yeah, that makes complete sense. Looks like Kat had agreed too. So
Uh, Robbie, I think a lot of people kind of look at another person's perspective, and it invokes a kind of like an envious, like fleshly desires, and they just kind of like that just kind of like what like how can I explain it? Um, Most people just looking in a fleshly way, and they're not really paying attention to like what uh scripture has to say and what like the spirit has to say over like their just over their fleshly desires. But that's pretty much all I had to say about it.
yeah, that's really on point. That is really on point. It kind of goes with what your wife said. Makes it difficult for true fellowship, right? So I would imagine, of course, I'll kind of speak on experiences really briefly, but I've been to an apostolic Pentecostal church before too. Baptist church, very similar, but apostolic, or Pentecostal. Um, it's more the Ruach is more emphasized, and I would say dramatized from a certain standpoint. Um, but it's the gifts, the fivefold ministry, and I'll talk about that soon. But if you are a prophet, apostle, things of that nature. So I would assume, based off going off what you're talking about, Mike, that even from what I've seen, envy, right? Spirit of envy entering into people because again, why don't I have this or why don't I have that? And then they have like I'll say this one church had the school of the prophets, right? So, I guess if you believe you're a prophet, you go to the school, and I guess essentially you will find out, if you are or not. And I guess that, again, there's certain requirements that you would have to meet with it, including, the prophet over it or apostle over it, deeming it true and their ruach to see the gift in someone else or activate it, things of that nature. So I didn't participate in it, but I would just, I just remembered it now. But that's not the only place that it was at. There's various uh of the same type of script or setup, in apostolic Pentecostal churches, even charismatic churches. Um so yeah, so I'm just supporting what you're saying, Mike. That is very true. That definitely you can see it and it does happen. And even from a non-denominational standpoint, right? May not be seeing tongues in there, but you may see the gift of teaching, right? From a pastor standpoint, or assistant pastor, or those who are put over certain groups, whatever it may be, still a gift, right? So overall, different gifts is being shown. Someone could be envious of another. Sister Chelsea said it also goes back to who's ordaining these people. Like Mike said, approaching the spiritual realm with carnal knowledge. That's very true. Very, very true. All right. So are we all good here? You have anything else to say before we move on?
I
Yeah.
just
So how do you?
Well, wait, what? What?
go Penelope because you're at work. I'm not.
Oh yeah, Penelope. She over there hiding out.
I was just gonna say real quick. I just think it's one body, many members, and everybody has their own function. So, I mean, the hand doesn't do what the foot does, and that's where I have to be with it. Like, what's for me, and I had to learn this the hard way because what Yahuwah endows in me may not necessarily be for everybody else. If you understand what I'm saying.
Yep. Yep. That kind of aligns with that Sirach 3 that talks about, not seeking out certain things that are harder or more difficult, for that specific person. And that, just to basically it just telling you the foundations are the most important things to understand and learn. And then we couple it with, fourth Ezra chapter 14, yeah, those three groups of people. I would imagine that whoever was labeled worthy, could look over to the wise and be like, man, they get all these other books or whatever. But, there are people who can understand, like, yeah, I'm not there yet, if at all, but I need to make sure I'm wherever he's putting me. I need to make sure I do really well there. Because again, if I was to jump over to that group, and fall short, that's when I'm gonna get judged off of. Right. So one portion in the vision of Paul, it does talk about that there are people who are going to be honored more than many people who actually remembered the 10 Commandments and stood on those 10 Commandments, even in their lives where they were, people were coming against them and trying to shame them. But these ones stood on these 10, and really went after it. And they will be honored in the city of Yahushua HaMashiach when it's here. They'll have a place where they're honored above many people. So like essentially that would be, they could be labeled as worthy, even wise. But I would, kind of look at that as from a standpoint of, again, you don't have to be like somebody else doing this and doing that, whatever the case is. But what is Yahuwah like calling you to do? Well, he called all of us to walk in truth, walk in the paths of discipline and righteousness. He's called all of us to do that. Every single man, he's laid that in front. Since we've been in Adam's loins, we've that's what's been presented to us, life or death, essentially. And he put things into man for us to answer that call. And so it really depends on the person and what they've chosen to do. And he never gave anybody a license to sin, as it says in Sirach 15. So, you know, it's understanding what's for you is for you. And we don't all know what's for us if we stay and put ourselves in a box and say, okay, well, this is only who I am. But then if you haven't experienced enough, you'll start saying, and if you ask, Yah will show you. This is who this is what I put in you. This is a skill that I put in you, a gift. You may not have the label of the gift in the scriptures to say, okay, this is specifically the gift, what it is. And you don't need to flaunt it to make people look at you different. You know, it's more so, again, humble approach to Yahuwah to say, this is what you putting me in position to do. And a lot of times it'll be even the most simplest things like your family. That's not really simple at all. But I'm saying it from a standpoint of like he's literally placed you with your children or your husband or wife or whatever the case is. It's right in front of you. While trying to, people may try to do everything else under the sun, deal with other people outside their home or, and act a whole different way. But then again, your household and the parable, different parables, it's like, again, imagine Yahuwah coming to your household. Yahushua coming to your household, knocking on your door. He's not coming when you're working with people and, evangelizing and whatever. He's coming to your household. Are y'all ready? Or like, he's like, are you ready? And he won't knock on that door if your household is dirty, if it, if it's unclean. Right. So all of that stuff goes into what you're saying, sister. Like having the maturity to realize, things like that is super important. And you can't put enough people together these days to really even have that approach and mindset. Is wild, but it's unfortunate. But I just supporting what you're talking about. All right then. Let's move on. So, and I will tell you guys, so your brother, me, I have a lot of experience with this stuff. So I know I still have the spiritual weapons of warfare on the line, to be put out there. I got so many studies, y'all, but I got a lot of children around here too. So, and life changes the more children that come. So I do my best. But with that being said, just know I am speaking from a place of experience and research, all that stuff. Obviously, not just in my own flesh and heart, my mind. I'm attaching to Yahuwah, asking him, flow through me so I can speak, do these different, speak on these different things. At some point, maybe we get in person one of these days, if Yahuwah willing. There's be more that I can discuss and talk to you guys about, but it's only so much that I will discuss online and in these settings. But I try to do my best to put certain things out that I'm supposed to. So I try to explain certain things. It seems like I'm dancing around something. Just it's not by accident. So I'm just want to make sure I can provide enough foundational understanding for these things for you to be able to go back and do some research, because you never know the day that some of this will come back, around, and whether it's an experience or someone else is seeking information, or you're going to see it online. I'm sure you're going to see it online at some point. You're going to see like, okay, it's really not worth it. You cannot put all this information and understanding to people in a post and a comment. Like it's comment wars and all that stuff like that. People are not talking like this. So, you just really start seeing like, man, okay, like this is where people are with this stuff. It's really interesting. So I just want to throw that out there. And I say all that humbly speaking. So from 3956, you will see in the Strong's concordance the name Lashon. There is a negative connotation attached to it, only because you have to be careful with Strong's. I've learned that more recently in the past 6 months or so. Obviously, um, Hebrew language and all that stuff. Like it's a lot of different details about it. Some can be reconciled together when it comes down to definitions and understanding spellings, and a lot can't. So you really have to just be careful from a standpoint of like, what has been influenced back then, and what has where is Hebrew, quote unquote Hebrew language now. That can also be called Abari or Yehudaya, different names. But ultimately, with Strong's, I would not just stop there on definitions a lot of times, because they place certain definitions in places that's not supposed to be there. And the only way you know that is if you just kind of do a little bit of research. Yes, it does take time. And it's a little bit of like, just recognizing it. So it don't mean that you can't just read normal. You can read normal, but you just get a certain flow of reading other translations, and your eye will just start noticing it. Your eyes will start noticing it. And then if you look up definitions, you'll see, okay, this is kind of interesting. It's here, especially compared to the Greek, right? Um, so another like a easy example would be the word fornication, right? So in the Greek, you'll see is so many, it's like 5 or 6 or 7 different terms that's connected to fornication. So one of the more popular one would be pornea, right? And so that's where you get pornography, all that stuff like that. But that's under the umbrella of fornication. When you get to the Old Testament, more Hebraic, you'll see that the easiest way to understand fornication is its uncleanness, right? So growing up in the church, fornication was always labeled to like what a married person would do in a sense, even though I was attached to adultery, but fornication was always labeled like with marriage and um uh what's that word with the I, infidelity or something like that. It was like it was some stuff that was always kind of like what I, at least when I grew up, when I was growing up in church, fornication was always connected to something of marriage and something happening, the sins happening in there, along with adultery. But adultery was also put, even if you were boyfriend or girlfriend and, you cheated on your boyfriend or girlfriend, having sexual relations with someone, they would still attach that to adultery, things like that too, right? So having sex before marriage. So they would just kind of put it under the same umbrella, at least from, again, when I was growing up, listening to some of these pastors or whatever. But from a Hebraic sense, fornication is just truly uncleanness. Like that's the easiest definition to understand. It's uncleanness. So going to the Greek, you'll see all those definitions in different terms. Essentially, it's all unclean. It's all uncleanness, right? So that's just throwing out an example of it. Um, so going back to uh this tongues part with this specific word that's in Strong's, um you guys can research it even right now if you want. But you'll see, of course, with Hebrew, generally speaking, Hebrew, uh that there will be a noun, whether it's masculine or feminine, and then there'll be a verb that is a has a root etymology within it. So it's like a verb within a noun, right? So say like usually like word origin. So from the noun 3956 Lashon, you'll see, like, for example, the one scripture you'll see this word is in Genesis 10:5. It says, everyone according to his language, according to their families, everyone after his tongue, and after their families, their lands, every to his language, to their families, to their nations. So it's highlighting in orange on what I'm seeing right here is highlighting according to his language, after his tongue, and to his language. So it's telling you, okay, this is what's connected to this term, language and tongue, essentially, right? So then you'll see that Strong's defines it as a babbler based off the KJV, babbler, or NASB. It also says plus evil speaker, language, talker, tongue, wedge, languages, speech. And then it'll have the Strong's exhaustive concordance, and it'll say from Lashon, the tongue of man of animals, used literally as the instrument of licking, eating, or speech, and figuratively speech, an ingot or a fork of flame, a cove of water, babbler, bay, evil speaker. And sometimes you can find another, like, older definition somewhere else or whatever the case is. So we're going to go to now the verb that's within this noun, H3960, and it's spelled, it sounds like the same, but it's spelled different. Lashan, Lashane. So this verb means to slander, to accuse, to use the tongue against someone, right? So again, when we're talking about tongues in the text, yes, you will see more about tongues, in the Greek, but from the Hebraic, which comes before the Greek, of course, the more foundational understanding, because again, as Jubilee says it, Hebrew, more so Abari, etc., are it's the language of creation. So anything that comes after is just an additive if it's the right thing. So with this verb that's within this noun, this is the verb. This is a negative verb or a negative connotation that's within the noun, and what we say is tongues. And literally is saying to slander, to accuse, to use the tongue against someone. Now, I'm pretty sure just off of that alone, we can see that that's not obviously how it's supposed to be defined. It's not supposed to be something negative, essentially, right? It also says to wag the tongue, to calumniate, um, to accuse, to slander. Now, this would be more so connected to like having a froward mouth, right? Speaking wrongly against your neighbor, um, slandering someone, right? So in that way, watch your tongue. Um, I'm pretty sure it says it a lot somewhere in Proverbs. I could probably pull that up somewhere. A scripture, it talks about the tongue, the foolish and all that stuff. That would make sense for this word to be assigned to those situations, right? So what I found was more of the correct number, and that's supposed to be attached to what we understand as tongues, is 6963. All right. And so that is Polat. Polat. Probably pronouncing it wrong, but that's all right. And it's spelled different if you go to more of the deeper Hebrew or the original, but it's all good. 6963. I'm just typing it up here. And so essentially you have its meaning like voice or voices or sound or noise. Okay. So it already off the back makes more sense from here, right? And so let's just say an example that Strong's gives, one of the scriptures is Genesis 3:8, and it says they heard the sound of Yahuwah. Another one is they heard the sound of you in the garden. So that obviously that's the one when Adam and Eve, they heard the sound of Yahuwah coming, and whom is Yahusha, based off of the text. Yahusha came down and was walking, and they heard the sound. They heard him, and that's when they were trying to hide, right? But they heard it. But also, you'll see that this also has a feeling, like they could feel this voice. It's a sound. It's a power that comes with it, right? And so, just in a normal sense, kol or kolat, it just simply means voice, sound, noise, bleeding, crackling, not bleeding, but not bleeding, but bleating, cry out, crackling, noise, proclamation, sing, sound, spark, thundering, voices, thunder, listen. So, it has all these definitions with it. There is not a verb within this that I'm seeing. There is just this noun here, which is interesting. But it's essentially the origin, the only origin of this word, I guess. There's other things you could probably find on it too, but I have a few things I'll show. But just think of it again from tongues, voices, right? So of course the big chapter is Acts 2, which we'll discuss. But I'll just mention here, since we have the screen, the screenshot here or the slide, they thunder, uttering voices is talked about in First Shinnach and Revelation. I think more memorable in Revelation, he heard the voices of the thunder, but he was told not to write it, right? Write down what they were talking about. And so in Shinnach, it does tell you that, how the thunder and the lightning works. There's a timing between the two, depending on what it is. And basically with thunder and lightning, it's for a blessing or a curse. So it's whatever Yahuwah is assigning, to the thunder and lightning at that time. And they have a storage that they come from, all that good stuff. But it's really beautiful. But it also it could either incite fertility, which is really cool, or essentially just, because of the weather, the seasonal patterns, but just off the foundation is a blessing or a curse. Um, it could be for a blessing or a curse. But essentially they have it's a voice, and it makes sense too because there's angels that are behind the lightning and the thunder as well. So Shinnok reveals that as well. There's an angel of frost. There's an angel that's over, the waters, things like that. It's really interesting. So Ruach, and these things are, even though they have angels over them, there are like the lightning and the thunder. They have a Ruach. They have it's like, in a sense, you could say it's a soul, but if they're alive, right? So it's not a soul like ours, but they're alive. They're there. They have a Ruach in a fashion that can't necessarily be explained, like this, essentially like the angels, right? The ones that did not rebel, they were already born with eternal life, right? So it's hard to say that they have a soul, right? But they have a ruach. Like it's like sometimes you just got to use the language, like Sirach said in the prologue. Like the Hebrew language just speaks different, right? It's just like what's understood is understood in a sense. Um, so hope all that made sense. But again, voices. Okay, voices is really what I was just trying to get to, and a good connection. So that way, you hear thunder and lightning, or you see lightning. It's just you kind of probably take more appreciative, or you be more appreciative of it. I guess it was be careful still, because you don't want to get hit and be like, I hope you like speak to me about what's happening in the heavens or something, like, don't do that. Uh, Fourth Ezra chapter 6, it says that's one of the really, really key chapters to show you how the Father and the Son are so yakad, because there's a lot of places in the Word where the Father is speaking and then the Son will speak, but it's so difficult for people to really see that, and a lot of it is in the book of Isaiah, and it's super, 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 super difficult to explain that to people, especially to people that believe that Yahushua is not in the Old Testament. It's incredibly difficult because they just look at you like you're making something up, and it's unfortunate. But in Fourth Ezra chapter 6, this is a prime example of their one of the great prime examples of their yakadness, because Abiyah is speaking first, and then he introduces or he facilitates, or tells Ezra that now you're going to hear essentially his son. You're going to hear a voice, and then he describes it, a great sounding voice, mighty sounding. It's a great motion, but even in that chapter, he says also it's not going to shake, but it's going to shake at the same time. It's like your brain can even wrap around it, because it's nothing that you can really fathom as a man or a woman from a fleshly standpoint, like how to really explain that, like something that's roaring and sounding and vibration and just shaking, but it's not. I don't know, man. It's so many places up too where Shinnok also was like he couldn't take it. Like it was just a lot of stuff. It just hits different. It just does it. So anyway, great motion, speech, and then from a phonology perspective, like the sound of many waters. So there's a portion in Shinnok as well where it talks about the dinosaurs, or the just great animals, I would say, that are at the ends of the earth. They have different sounds and things like that. So we watched movies before. So Jurassic Park, very easy. Hear all those different sounds. And essentially, when you think about how everybody was speaking the same language, even the animals, you hear how animals speak, dogs, cats, um, all of that was like connected from a sound perspective, how people enunciated words, like it was all connected and it was understood. Right. So it's just very interesting when you start researching some of these things. It's it'll really fascinate you. But the sound of many waters is very important to remember here. Okay, so we're talking about voices from a tongue's perspective. Think about Yahusha's voice. It's many voices all at once. So it's many tongues all at once. Like, but they're not sounding different. It's just many, and it's just it's just someone who explained to you how it feels and hear and sounds who's experienced it will tell you the same thing. It's super difficult for them to explain it. I think I heard somebody trying to comment. Okay. So then you see in Shinnok chapter 71. Okay, so we're gonna round about this a little bit later. 71 verse 8, it says there was rivers full of living fire around it like a circle. All right, so it's going to match up with chapter 14, which we'll discuss very soon. But living fire, but it was talking about tongues. It was talking about like there was tongues of fire as well. Okay. In Ezekiel chapter 1, the Ophanim. So when their wings was fluttering, it sounded like the voices of many waters. It sounded like Yahusha's voice when their wings would flutter. And again, they were moving at the sound of Yahusha, and Abiyah as well. Like there's this whole imagery going on in that chapter, but their wings like sounding like that and moving and sync and all that. It's quite amazing, to say the least. So voices is really what we're thinking about right now with tongues. So now we can go to chapter 14 because this is very important. So in chapter 14, what we're seeing here is a situation with Shinnok, where he is going into the heavens. Okay, so through the visions that he have, through this vision, and the vision, it starts at verse 8. Verse 8. All right, so you instantly see in verse 9 that he is accelerating, into the heavens, and that again, it's not going to be anything in the heavens that is of Hasatan or of Sheol, lake of fire type of situation. It's not going to be things like that. But whatever is up there, again, is heavenly. Okay, so that's very clear. Verse 10, he says that these angels elevated him, and the winds elevated him to heaven. And when he gets there, he arrives at a wall built with stones of crystal or sapphire. All right. So if you understand the sapphire connection there with Yahusha, okay, it's very significant. And he says, a tongue of fire surrounded it, which began to strike me with terror. Okay. So again, we looked at the call, the 6963, where it's talking about the definition of tongues, essentially, or voices. It's a proclamation. It can be bleating, crackling. It can be called a loud, and even proclamation also has connections to prophesying. Okay, so whatever this tongue of fire, these tongue of fire was surrounding this wall, it was striking with terror because, again, speaking the things of Yahuwah, right? And again, Shinnok in this moment, it's also like an elevation that he's experiencing also throughout the time. So not as the son of Adam, like he's not the son of Adam, but it's like he's also growing, in spirit and in truth, because he's getting more understanding, right? So right in this moment, he's like super terrified. He's like, just like, man, like it's so much, right? Um, so he enters into this place. He sees that there's a vibrating flame. He enters into it because it's obviously an entrance. And the first place he enters is a spacious habitation. All right, it's built with the stones of crystal, aka or also sapphire. He talks about the walls too, formed with stones of crystal. Crystal likewise was the ground. Its roof had the appearance of agitated stars and flashes of lightning, and among them were the cherubim. So it's a type of angel and types of angels of fire, and their heaven was water. A flame burned around its walls, and its portal blazed with fire. And when I entered into this dwelling, it was hot as fire and cold as ice. No trace of delight or life was there. Terror overwhelmed me, and a fearful shaking seized me. Okay, so this tongue of fire that was at the beginning of this habitation at the entrance, very important to understanding the voices and understanding the word, right? As we say, the word is made flesh. Like Yahusha truly encompasses the word, because this is his habitation. He was not there at the moment, because there's portions in Shinnach as well. It says Yahusha often ascends and descends. He has a throne on earth and a throne in heaven. So essentially, this habitation is where he is located, and that essentially in this moment too, this is a moment where everything is also getting, it's the start of Shinnach. So it's at least this book, and he's going to eventually, talk about more about Yahusha, things like that, in the parables, etc. So he's not there in that moment. So it just kind of makes sense on how the timing of it is. But that's why it says it was no life in there, right? So he's entered into that habitation. Again, the scriptures say he is the life thereof, right? So he is the bread of life. So he's also, again, representation of the tongues of fire, the voices of fire, the sound of many waters. You see, the cherubim had their heaven, as it says, from a firmament standpoint of water, even though they were of fire. So it's just this, like, again, he's explaining it, but we can only imagine, like, my goodness, like how we can't even imagine it, but it's a habitation, right? And so again, he has to go through this habitation in order to, towards the end of this chapter, he now reaches into a different habitation that has an entrance into it. Like it says, verse 14, he beheld there was another habitation more spacious, and every entrance which was open before me erected in a vibrating flame. And so now he's like, okay, this one excels all the points, the glory and that magnificence. It's impossible to describe to you the splendor of it. The floor is on fire, lightning and agitated stars. The roof was on fire, blazing fire. And then it's a super like exalted throne. The appearance of it was like that of frost, while it was circumference was like the sun. There was a voice of the cherubim. So there you got the voice word. And to look upon it was impossible. Throne had rivers of flame and fire around it, and it was one great in glory that was sitting upon it. That's Abu Yahuwah. And so I love how Shinnach called him the great, glorious, and effulgent one, because he couldn't even penetrate to view the face of him. No mortal could behold him. There was a fire surrounding him that constantly continued, like constantly. It just kept getting higher, higher, higher. No stopping point. No stopping point. The fire was so great, extent continued to rise up before him, so that no one of those who surrounded him was capable of approaching him. Among the myriads and myriads who were before him, to him holy consultation was needless. Yet did not the sanctified who were near him depart from him, neither by day or night, nor were they removed from him. And Shinnach says he was so far advanced that he had a veil on his face as well. He was trembling. So Abu Yahuwah actually told him to come, but he could only get to the entrance, right? He couldn't even go further than that. And he looked to the ground. He couldn't even look up, right? And so again, that's comparable to Ezra. He was talking to Yahusha at one point in that same chapter, what I told you about Abu Yahuwah telling him that Yahusha is getting ready to speak, essentially, that Ezra was actually looking upon Yahusha little by little. So he could still look, you know what I'm saying? He could still get his eyes and kind of look upon it. He said little by little, he was trying to like see. So you think about like the sun, looking at SUN, and you try to look at the sun, but then you can't look for long. And you kind of look again, it's just going to hurt your eyes and probably blind you at some point. But so much different description than Shinnach not even being able to look up. You know what I'm saying? Just straight to the ground. But at least he got to the entrance, but he still cannot go through. Now, when you think about Revelation 1 and other places, where Yahusha is sitting right there, standing right there by the Father. It's so different. And this is just to throw out there. This, when you talk about the heavenly priesthood, these are the tabernacles. This is the tabernacles. So Yahusha gave Moshe he gave Moshe a blueprint, to have him build a likeness of the tabernacle. But in heaven, you have a tabernacle, but it's like a double, it's like a twofold tabernacle, which is something, again, I will share with you guys at some point. But I do want to show you, just because I know some of you guys really love this stuff. When you see in chapter 1 that Yahusha was seen by John around those 12 menorahs, like when you look at how Solomon's temple was built and you see these menorahs around, these showbread and all that stuff, and then you're thinking about chapter 14 and you're seeing how Shinnach went through that first habitation and then that second habitation, again, was super spacious, but Abba Yahuwah was still like in a place where it was like not even a box within a box, but you guys know what I'm saying. Like, it's like just so holy, like so glorious and effulgent. And Yahushua is the only one who can be there in his presence until he's able to bring everybody into his Father's presence. You have, like, imagine how holy you need to be, right? And that's the whole point of this walk. He's like, I'm gonna get you to make it, like, you know what I'm saying? So anyway, I just want to kind of give you guys a mindset. Chapter 14 is super huge when it comes down to the heavenly priesthood. So just be on the lookout for that study at some point. But again, voices, the tongue of fire that was on the entrance, right? Entrance of Yahusha's space, his habitation. And then you'll see here, let's just say going to Acts 2, right? So let's kind of skip forward a little bit with separate tongues. All right, so you can go to chapter 2. Sorry, guys, you can go to chapter 2 of Acts 2. Of Acts, goodness gracious. And you'll see, I'm just going to read just from the Sefer. It does say that they had tongues of fire. I'm trying to find it. Yeah, so verse 3, it says, they appeared unto them cloven tongues like as of fire, and it sat upon each of them. Right. So it's interesting too. Again, you go to verse 2. It does say that there was a mighty wind, right? So it kind of follows the pattern of Shinnach, like literally him getting boosted up there by the winds, right? And the angels take him off the winds to place him at the habitation. And the first thing he sees is this crystal and tongues of fire, things like that. So I just think it's very interesting, very, kind of similar pattern. But it does say that they had tongues like as of fire, right? And then verse 4, they were all filled with the Ruach and began to speak with other tongues as the Ruach gave them utterance, right? So this is super important because when we talk about voices, right, and we talk about the origin, right? So if Yahusha has voices of many waters, and again, it's not just like multiple languages, because that's what's been labeled for tongues. It's like, oh, tongues is just different languages around the world. That's not how even the original connection of the voices even breaks down. Right. So yes, shalom, shalom. Thank you for coming. So this was a moment in time in Acts 2. It literally says it was a peculiar dialect that was being allowed to sit on the tongue of different people. So that way, in this moment when there was a bunch of people around in the time of Shavuot, like people were able to experience this moment in time, this specific moment that Yahuwah allowed through the Ruach. so everybody could hear these voices, right? These different languages, but essentially the Ruach allowed it to be different languages. So from the voices, right? So from the Cole, the 6963, there is no language attached to voice, if you guys understand what I'm saying. It's sound, it's noise. There's no language attached to it. So Yahuwah attached the languages to the voice and the sound and the noises from the Ruach. Right. So people get so confident to say this is what tongues are. It's just only languages and other it's just people speaking in other languages or whatever the case is. No, that's absolutely not what it is. But at least you can see from a foundational standpoint, even the Hebrew breaks it down when you actually connect it correctly, right? So, and I'm just giving summaries because I just need to bring it all together. With the Testament of Job, or Jobab, or Yab, or Yabab, chapter 11, it will tell you about the his daughters. So this is a point where he's already kind of passed. He already passed all his tests and stuff like that. So he's gifting his sons, and now he's gifting his daughters with something heavenly of Yahuwah. He gives them these strings, and he tells them to tie the strings on them on their body like a girdle, right? So from a girdle standpoint, you also remember, how the ephod, right? The heavenly priesthood, the ephod is like a girdle, right? So just again, write that down. But essentially, our battle armor in a spiritual realm, things that we put on us in righteousness, it's like a girdle. But essentially these strings allowed three strings, they each gave the daughters different essentially gifts, right? Different ability to speak. And the basic understanding of it is that they spoke the language of the angels. That's what it says. So they spoke the language of the angels. And from a tongues perspective, again, going to the voices, remember the angels were also created first on day one, as Jubilee says. And it's the language of creation. So if things were already spread and confused at the point of with the Tower of Babel and Yahuwah, scattering those languages, then he supposedly taught Abraham the pure language, right? And it's been scattered and been just again where we are. We're in our captivity. We're speaking a whole different language than true, Abari, Yehudiyah. Like we're speaking a whole different language. We're learning, right? But we don't speak it. But the utterance given by the Ruach, the voice, the noise, the sound, Yahuwah gives that through the Ruach. And the language, when it's pure tongues, quote unquote, is a heavenly language. It's not a language of man. It's a heavenly language. And that tells you right there, the angels speak that heavenly language. They speak that. So when someone is endowed with this gift, remember the angels are ministers of Yahuwah, right? So they're our brothers for the righteous, and even the unrighteous. They are reporting to Yahuwah the acts of man, whether they are righteous or not. Like you could read that in the Vision of Paul. Really good description of it. So if they're ministers and they also fight against evil spirits, essentially what I'll give you, like just to give your mindset something, that this is experience. When someone is speaking tongues that is not being interpreted by somebody that is given the gift of interpretation in that moment, more than likely what's happening, if it's true, they are speaking heavenly language into the atmosphere. And it could be about praying for somebody that you don't even know who they're praying for, somebody in that specific environment, or someone, maybe in their situation. It could be a covering, of the environment, because again, demons are trying to enter or disrupt or whatever the case is. There's various things that could be happening when, especially the gifts of when the tongues aren't being interpreted, quote unquote. The only time it's going to be interpreted if it's in a setting where you have people around and people are praising and worshiping, and it's for everyone to hear. Paul was saying for it not to get out of order, to where you guys all have talked about that you've seen running and like people just, just kind of just it just looks like it's just out of nowhere, right? It's kind of like chaotic. Paul was saying it should not be chaotic. It should not be something that is out of order, because that represents Yahuwah. And for something to be out of order to represent him, that doesn't go together. Right. So doesn't mean that orderly means you put a box in it and what happens in the Ruach, but it's more so, again, because you can't contain tongues of fire, voices of fire, right? You can't decide, even if you have the gifts of how to speak it. It's just gonna come out. It could be praise, it could be uh praying, it could be protection. And sometimes the person that has the gifts of tongues will also interpret in that moment as well. They will speak the tongues, and then Yahuwah will allow that person to interpret what they're talking about. And it could also be something to that person. It could be prophesying to the people, it could be prophesying to that person, or it could be correcting that person or whatever, or it could just be, again, Yahuwah just literally speaking in the heavenly language through that person. And it's a conversation, and sometimes the person doesn't even really know all that they are saying, because they're in the Ruach. It's just something different. And I will show you guys, I will show you guys an example of language, of again, how this, because it's through voice and it's not being written down, right? I will show you kind of just like an image of like how Yahuwah's language, right? How his voice kind of translates. So that first part of it right there is a pictograph, like it's an ancient pictograph form, right? So imagine tongues of fire. There's no, you can't measure the speed of how a person is talking. And sometimes there's people have the gifts of tongues. There's different like a sort of dialect that a person can have, because not everybody speaks the same, has the same dialect. So there's some people who speak much differently in a more ancient form of it, or in a way where somebody may have a gift of praise, and like their language and their tongues, you may hear very similar pattern of what they're specifically saying, but it doesn't mean that they're saying the same thing. It can just again, it's just how tongues work. It's just a heavenly language. Yahuwah can put anything within a voice and a sound, and it's just coming out, and so the person that doesn't know what's going on, or hearing, or they don't know what's being said, it just sounds like what Strong's put in that first definition, like it's babbling. But who are we to sit there and say that Yahuwah's language is babble? Isn't that crazy? Like, Yahuwah said he confounded the language to be, in Babel, and it's essentially Babel, right? And it confounded the language, and it's spread all over the place. But then you got man putting a definition and a wrong Hebrew word to say that Yahuwah's language, tongues of fire, voices of fire, etc., is Babel. It's babbling. Like, this is, it's just wild. But again, just from this standpoint, what you guys are seeing here, the pictograph, the ancient, that's the Abari, the Hebrew, the not really Hebrew, but anyway, but Bari, Yehudiah, and that's the written form of it, right? And so then you get to, let's just say, the letters. You notice that there's not really much vowels there. They got an A in there, but it's not really much vowels. And then you keep breaking it down into making it make sense for an English speaker. you notice right there for Ashua is the end of the world, and Kov is the beginning of it that follows, right? Ashua is Esau in this moment, like that's how it's spelled um, in another way. But again, for us to make it make sense, we got a third. We're at the third line until you learn how to read, right? Until you learn how to read like this, just different, right? So again, how can we sit there and say that tongues is just a language somewhere in the world when that is not even the origins of any of that? There's no foundations to truly support that. It's only one event that people have pulled from to give it that label. And it literally it doesn't make sense. Right. So let me see here. I pretty much summed it all up, I believe. There could be something I didn't bring in, but I would say, like with that video that one pastor was exposing someone because they came and at the order of the pastor to say, okay, start speaking tongues, that lady, she basically tapped into some other spirit. And that's what it is as well. Remember, the fallen angels knows things of heaven. So of course they spoke the language. They spoke the original pure language of the heavens. But when they're in their fallen state, of course it changed, but essentially they can still speak. So of course they tie in these different signs and all these different their own type of language and lettering system and all that stuff over time. They've taught all those things, right? So then of course with the spirit of error, you know, the spirit of error can speak through somebody and make it seem like it's tongues. And that's why he was exposing it, because she just started just speaking it on a drop of a dime, and it wasn't even true. But whatever was in her spirit that was not of Yahuwah just kept it, like it'll keep, because they've opened themselves up to a spirit of error. The spirit of error will again just keep speaking. It will bring this what seems like is voices and tongues of Yahuwah. It will bring it out. It will make it seem like it's true tongues, because people open themselves up to whatever is like going to engage in that. And so that's where, someone like what you're saying, Kat, like you could feel something that was off, because again, spiritual realm, there's the demons will try to get through and operate in places where people have opened themselves up. Let's just say a Pentecostal church or charismatic church, apostolic church. They can open themselves up so much because they want a gift so bad that they can open themselves up to a spirit of error that will start speaking in them and make them think that they are speaking in tongues. There's another situation at this same apostolic church that I was at. This guy and this woman was going around to different churches, apostolic churches, and saying that they could unlock or actually give the gift of tongues to people. So they would have them stand up and go to them after they explain some stuff or whatever. They say, okay, now you can stand up, right? And come to us and we'll unlock that gift for you. Right. So of course, I'm young at this time, like somewhere in my teens, but Yahuwah always gave me a spirit of wisdom and discernment. Thank Yahuwah. But it was like I knew I didn't want to go up there. Right. And I don't think I don't know what it was. I think somebody had told me to go up there, or it was something, because I wasn't comfortable anyway at this church anyway, but it was my wife and I and our parents and stuff like that. So we don't, of course, we end up leaving that place anyway, but um like he tried to get you to start talking, like say like la la or something, whatever, like try to get you to like enunciate some words or some letters, some sound. And then it was supposed to just all come together as he was like, but then of course, this is another thing that I'll teach you guys about this in the spirit of the weapons of spiritual warfare. When these people try to put their hand on your stomach, that's where the bosom of the Ruach lies in your bosom. So when they're touching people's stomach and all that stuff like that, because people are open, that's why the people will fall and like start shaking because they're opening themselves up to something, especially that's unholy. There's moments where it's a holy thing, it's a pure thing, and it's supposed to happen. But like in those moments, yes, bosom, the gut, yes. So in those moments, right, it's like people were starting to speak in certain ways, but it wasn't of the Ruach. Like, and you could tell if you're in the Ruach in that moment, like you start feeling something in your Ruach, like it's like a flame, it's like something off. And sometimes you may get it like it's like a twist in your Ruach, like it's like you can tell it's something off. But when I went up there, he couldn't do anything with me. Like he was trying to do something, but I was already closed. So I'm like, I'm not letting you, touch me like that. I'm not letting you. I already knew it was false. I just kind of think I just went up there just to, you know, make somebody around that was watching, think that I was going up there. But I didn't speak it. I did not speak it at all because I was just like, I already, but there's videos on there too. Somebody will go up trying to receive the gift and they may start shaking or they just start saying some type of stuff, whatever. There's a video, you got Tyler Perry, you know, um, going up there trying to speak, and then people again, oh, he has the spirit, especially our people, so gullible because we grew up with this stuff, super gullible. Oh, he has a ruach. Oh my gosh! And all of a sudden, another movie comes out. Dude is in wearing, you see it, but there's no connection. It's just like, oh, he's just doing it for movie purposes. Oh, but then he goes to Joel Osteen's church and starts speaking in tongues. Like it's we're so gullible. People are so gullible to these different things because it's like, oh my God, I wish I had that, or oh, that's a sign of like this person is super holy and they should be assigned in these places, and it's so much to this. So when I get to that spiritual weapon of warfare, gifts of tongues, I'm gonna break it down very similar, but it's also to give whomever you guys that may end up having that gift understanding of it, because you must be superbly humble to use that gift. And it does not come when you want it. You can't just wield it like freaking Harry Potter, when he was speaking in that tongue, in that snake language. I mean, even in that moment, he didn't even try to, but, I think eventually he got control of it and he was able to speak it. That's not how this works with tongues and voices. The Ruach must come through, and you have to be in a place of vulnerability with Yahuwah and know what that is. It's not oh, well, let me start practicing to be vulnerable with Yahuwah in my prayer time and maybe he'll give me the gift. It's not to desire it in that way, but just understand like those who have it, who actually use it, like, who have this gift, they understand that it's not just a privilege, but it's a responsibility. It's a responsibility because again, the tongues could be, you're praying, you don't even know what's being said. You may not know what's being said, but you're praying for somebody else that needs the prayer in that moment. It's spiritual warfare. That's really what it is. It's spiritual warfare. Sometimes it's praise, you know? And again, we have a cursed language. So Yahuwah doesn't want to speak our language, but he will interpret through a person, or a person, that is hearing Yahuwah, that has an ear and is listening and speaking like the prophets that are still around, right? So that goes into play with the gifts. Supposedly there's no prophets and apostles, no. There's no prophets left. There's no seers left, whatever it may be. So that's another thing. Again, putting Yahuwah in the box to say, okay, well, this is not here, this is not there, blah, blah. And so there's not by accident, people don't speak on these things at all. And it's just the word, because that's the physical that they can reach. Right. But if a prophet is hearing from Yahuwah and speaking truly, then they will speak what he's saying, because in that moment, especially of gifts of tongues, of hearing his voice, Yahuwah will allow them to hear him speak, and that he's telling them what to say. So that's why we have a lot of written scripture from these quote unquote major and minor prophets, because they were able, they engaged into the gift so much that they were able to be given a ruach of reasoning to be able to write. So fourth Ezra chapter 14 is a very good uh place to read that. Ezra was given fire in his mouth to speak the voices, the tongues of Yahuwah, and essentially prophesying, essentially putting truth out there. And then he had these 5 scribes that were given a gift from Yahuwah to be able to even write swiftly. So they already had a skill to write swiftly, but they needed the Ruach to even catch up to what Yahuwah was speaking through Ezra. So just awesome, just super awesome, right? But it's the heavenly language. It's the language of the angels, right? And then there's another part in the apocalypse of Zephaniah, where, remember, the angel was reading his scroll, and he read the scroll. It was talking about his shortcomings and things like that. But essentially, there was a part that was cut off. But he said there was another scroll written in his language, right? So the initial scroll was read by the angel that was not written in Zephaniah's language. He couldn't read it, right? So then compare that to Tanakh, where he was able to read the heavenly tablets. And guess what? It says that he was always around who? Angels. He was always around, this dwelling was around the angels. So then it's telling you that Tanakh was taken to the Garden of Eden to continue to write and be a scribe of ultimate scribe of righteousness, writing out down all the things of man. You think he's writing in Hebrew or Yehudiyath and Abari? It's something more pure than that. So that's why I always say, even if there is understanding before the Yiddish, and the Yiddish influence has been on the more pure part of Hebrew, there's still something to learn there, right? There's still something to learn, but then know, okay, why did they add this little accent here, these vowels, and the Masoretes, why did they do this and do that? It's always something to learn, because there's so many, there's a massive facets of this language that has been, again, it's not pure. We don't have anything pure, but we're trying, right? You will reveal it to us, but we can gather enough connections to put it all together to make a whole. And it's just going to blow our mind, and we'll never stop learning. That's the beauty of it. It just unfolds, and it's just overwhelms you in a good way, where, again, it's the voice of many waters. It's the sound of many waters. It's so much more that just keeps pouring out. You know what I'm saying? So that's the connection of the tongues. And it is beautiful, but it doesn't need to be wielded by every single person. But what I've seen personally is that more women get this gift than men, because women have a different place of vulnerability that they can reach in Yahuwah. Not saying man can't, but women seem to be, in some type of place, if you can get there, regardless if you speak tongues or not, even with prayer, right? With just, again, the womb is something different. So I think that's one of the gifts that Yahuwah gave the woman, from a standpoint of like connection, not the tongues part, but the connection. Because even though Eve did what she did, and that, Hasatan tried to ruin that, Yahuwah always has a ram in a bush, right? So it's something with women, if you can remain pure unto him. That's why I made that study pure, because if you could remain pure unto Yahuwah, you don't come with the same emotions, and it's so much different. It's a reason why Miriam was chosen to allow Yahusha to sit in her womb by the Ruach. It's a reason why, right? Doesn't mean that we praise Mary, but it's a reason why, as an example of purity. Temple being pure unto Yahuwah. right? So it's things to take from that. So when someone is speaking in true, pure tongues of the heavenly language, that would mean that they're in the right place. And they're in the right place from a pure perspective. And Yahuwah will allow what he will allow. It's not something you could just conjure up yourself. Yahuwah will allow what he will allow. So there are moments in scripture where you will see that there were prophets and there were prophetesses that were around them too. And I think in the Ascension of Isaiah, if I'm remembering correctly, it talks about that moment. And there was languages, there was voices, there were tongues that was being spoken essentially in these different moments because Yahuwah was prophesying through different people. And again, what looks like chaos to someone else on the outside because they want to put Yahuwah in the box, again, is order and you know, heavenly just beauty of just again, just just unexplainable, but just Yahuwah moving to someone else who's able to understand it from a different perspective of like more of the truth. Right? There was prophesying going on. Someone was interpreting, someone was writing. Obviously, in order for us to read it. So, but it was this order. So essentially, it kind of seems like it looked like the fivefold ministry, as they try to say in apostolic churches and the Pentecostal, got the apostle, prophet, evangelist, things like that, teacher. Um, it's like an order. But essentially, when you think about the body, think about the gifts. Think about like there's different people who operating in certain gifts. Then you still got again people are supposed to teach and be priests or whatever the case is. They have some connection, political priesthood, whatever. Some people have connections to worship, whatever it may be. So how beautiful is that to be in the body of Yahusha, wanting to and desiring to use the gifts and skills that he even gave you, right? Not this division that we still continue to see, right? And so, again, everybody wants to claim, "Oh, I'm Yehuda." There's different tribes that have different things in their tribes too, you know. So, limit yourself. If we limit ourselves in these low ways, you know what I'm saying? Like we just ask Yahuwah. Either you ask him what's your gift, don't obsess with it, but just again, once you put it in front of you, you'll find out what your gift is. You'll find out what your skills are, what he's put you on this earth for. Because just like David was a shepherd, right? Things will reveal itself what he was going to do in the future. Moshe, even Noah, Abraham. Abraham was faithful in all things. All things, no, through his temptations, his tribulations, all of that. So you want to call yourself a son or daughter of Abraham. What characteristics do you think you need to have? What did he do for people? How did he show himself in situations? How did you want to say Matthew 5:16, let your light shine before all men and so they glorify, the Father in heaven? Like that's connected to various people in this word, men and women, not beasts, men and women who truly walk in Yahuwah, the elect and righteous. That's the posterity that Shinnach was talking about, that are righteous. That's the posterity that Abraham was talking about. So if it includes the gifts of tongues that some will speak, it's going to be tongues of fire, and it's going to be true, and it's going to be orderly in Yahuwah. And if there's no interpreter speaking in that moment, that means it's not out of order. That means there's something else going on, and all you need to do is pray. If you hear tongues is true, you need to pray and humble yourself from before Yahuwah, because his presence is even nearer than you even think. Honor Yahuwah more. Understand that that's heavenly. It's heavenly. You don't have to have this. Just like a teacher, not everybody's supposed to be teachers because you will get judged more than many. So you have to be careful, absolutely careful. Not every, just because, again, facilitate a group, not a teacher, right? Not everybody's a teacher because you facilitate a group, but even if maybe you are a teacher, if you facilitate a group, it just really depends. But some people are going to be evangelists. Some people are setting up conversation. Some people are, doing various things. It don't mean that you have to be labeled something specific. Do what Yahuwah has called you to do in that moment or around the people that you're around, and be ready in and out of season like you're supposed to. Follow his word, do what he's asking you to do. And just as I'll go over this again in the weapons of spiritual warfare, fasting, there's different facets of fasting. So just remember this one facet, you are always fasting if you're walking in righteousness, because you are separate from this world. That's in Shepherd of Hermas. So stay pure, who will reveal different gifts to you, but essentially with the tongues, again, I just laid out all these things. And remember, Acts 2 is just a moment in time that you will allow it for the voices, the sound to become different people's languages. Okay, so if anybody tells you that's what tongues are, please, now you got something to go back on, some heavy hitters, some foundations. So, a lot of times when I see this stuff out there, I just shake my head, or I just, I can't, I'm not going to argue with people or whatever. I just kind of keep a lot of stuff to myself. I'm just like, all right. Especially because I have experience with this stuff, like around my family and things like that. Like, I just, all right, well, okay, little by little, but it don't mean, again, you still got to take anything I said, as truth. You still got to make sure you verify it for yourself. Study, allow Yahuwah to work in your heart and your ruach. You know what I'm saying? So that's all I got, y'all, for tongues. That's about it. Anybody have any questions? Did I not cover anything? I will say real quick that I just thought about it. Yes, demons do speak tongues in their way. So again, curses, when you think about how you speak, even if English, let's just say curse language, they always say that, right? We still got to speak it. So how you speak it makes sense. That's why the scriptures say, don't let anything froward come out of your mouth. Froward is abomination. It's like hatred, it's uncleanness. So how you speak truly is important. Truly, 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 truly important. So if you feel that angel of unrighteousness and wickedness is easily able to influence your mouth and how you speak, you're uttering that in your own home, in your own heart, in your own mindset. So just because you think that because you made up or, ask for forgiveness, whatever the case is, just know you got to be extra careful to make sure those demons cannot return, or, what I'm saying? Like you cannot tread lightly with stuff. Because the more we engage in something that we're not supposed to, the more the demons will come around. And if you're speaking curses out of your mouth and they are influencing that, that means they're speaking their curses from their mouth through your mouth. And you think the Ruach is supposed to stay in you, that's not how that works. So that's why you will see scripture. The Ruach will depart. And let us be fearful to take so many moments in our lives to really think Yahuwah is supposed to give us mercy after mercy after mercy after mercy, to keep the Ruach with us or allow the Ruach to depart and come back, to come to our senses. That's not how this works either. He wants a clean vessel, subject unto him to work righteousness, not for the Ruach of wisdom to continue to leave and not want to dwell with you, then all of a sudden come with you for a little bit, then leave again. We got to get to a place again. In Shinnach chapter 6, it says for us not to repeat transgression. We're gonna fall short in certain moments, and even when we don't know, again, there's certain things that probably should be done. But again, where's our heart at? Where are we? What are we truly doing? Are we loving our neighbor as ourselves? Are we doing? Are we loving Yahuwah as he's asking us to love him and walk in his ways through Yahusha? Do we understand who Yahusha is? Do we understand that Yahusha also deserves praise? That's another heavy issue. Then the whole Yahusha, Yahuwah is Yahuwah thing. People are actually blaspheming against the name of Yahuwah when they say Yahusha is not Yahuwah. Because just off of the name alone, Yahusha means Yahuwah is salvation. Like, you're literally saying that Yahusha is not Yahuwah. Like, just really think about that. The one that literally, the elect one that carries the name Yahuwah, that's literally showing you in the book of Shana, written down, that that's his name, is Yahuwah. That's a family name, as one of my brothers has said, that I thought is excellent. It's a family name. And you want to blaspheme it off of misunderstanding and not in all this division and things like that. Over stuff that should be more simple. But people don't even realize what they're doing. Right? So it's so many different things that people are overlooking from a foundational standpoint, including just speaking the way you're supposed to speak. That's also in your mind too. You can't, just because you're not saying it, don't mean the voices in your head don't count. You have to submit all of that to Yahuwah. As the scripture says somewhere in Corinthians, y'all can pull that up if y'all can, the stronghold one. Everything must bow to Yahusha HaMashiach, unto Abba Yahuwah Sabaoth. For the pulling down of strongholds, etc. says, I can't remember word for word, bar for bar, was for pulling down of strongholds. But what trips me out is, how long do we allow these things to hold us back? It's sad. It's sad. I've seen my own children. They can fight a little bit, have a little beef here and there. But my 1-year-old will pray for my 4-year-old. My 4-year-old will pray for her sister, for her 1-year-old, for her brother, her 5-year-old. My son will hold my 1-year-old's hands and they will pray. And it's so hard for two grown people to pray together consistently when you have children doing it in your face, and we can't even do that together consistently. We got arguments, got these little things. We can't and we still think we're old mercy. We're old, oh, I'm Yasharal, he's gonna save us, whatever. Sins of our fathers, entitlement. Oh, I deserve this gift because I so desire it. Did you check yourself today? Did you have a self-reflecting moment today? What are you doing right and what are you doing wrong? What can you do better today? But again, we allow the spirits of error, hatred, of whatever else to stay in our heart that we can't even do. Adults, quote unquote adults, can't do what these children can do. And that's who you see also. The ones who are righteous, like Caleb and Yahushua, son of Nun, and the children were able to go into the promised land. Not the ones that have been sitting here thinking that they did all these different things and Yahushua did all this, whatever, blah, blah, blah. And their heart wasn't even correct. They couldn't do the simplest stuff to forgive and walk righteously consistently and all that stuff. They were told to go walk in the dirt till they die. It's serious. So couple that with the consummation, tribulation is almost here, and we're going to be tried as gold in the fire. Couple that with all that just being said, that's why in Second Baruch it says that it's better for people to not behold that specific time when it starts It's better for them not to even think that they should go through that, because the ones that believe that they should go through this tribulation, think they're going to endure to the end, that are not prepared truly and did not really get to that soldier standpoint with not repeating transgression and things of that nature, do not expect to make it, because it's more likely that you will lose out of your salvation than truly make it. And everybody that you see around in these communities, second Exodus, like we're ready, blah, blah, blah. Like, no. True fear tells you you are not ready yet. Ask Yahuwah for more mercy and time so we can get ready, so we can truly prepare for our battle the right way. So my job as your brother that knows my gift in teaching whatever, I'm supposed to make sure I can get to these studies as much as possible so I can help my people, my brothers and sisters prepare. So when stuff really gets lit out here, we're ready. So it starts with this stuff like this, foundations, not just because you got more knowledge now, like, oh, I know the truth of this or whatever. How does it affect your heart today? Everything that we talked about, what did it do to your heart and your actions for you to move forward in growth? Not just retaining it like knowledge that you went to a class, you know what I'm saying, and got taught something, and whatever the case is, you got something to study and do some homework. How did it really hit you? And what does that mean? Because you don't want the word to be sown in to a ground that's not really going to keep the word, thorns and thistles, and the enemy's going to come around as soon as you get off of here and attempt and take that word from you, whatever's in your heart that changed you, and because it never got sown into good soil. That easy. You know what I'm saying? So stop. Yeah, I'm done, y'all. Done. Y'all get it. Like Kat said, so with Yasharal, the religion, we see they come together to pray contently, but they don't want to walk in the Most High truth. Those in truth don't even have a baseline to pray and combat spiritual warfare. Absolutely. It's so much easier for people to go back to religion. Exactly, sister. Exactly. And then the false
Meant
shepherd out there.
continually. My bad.
Oh no, yeah, you're good. You're good. But it's true. It's absolutely true. Man, that's all I got, y'all. That's all I got. Done. Have any questions, concerns, comments? I'm gonna post all this stuff, these video very soon when it gets ready. But I hope you guys enjoyed this. I really enjoyed the conversation, the discussion from you guys. I truly appreciate it. Truly, I love to hear your voices, and you know, really pray for you guys to grow continuously, no matter what we all go through. And that's why we fellowship. It's supposed to be iron sharpening iron and growing together and understanding, so we can endure and we could, put on this and feel stronger. You know what I'm saying? Like in the Ruach. And when we fall short, we talk to one another, confess our faults, try to help each other out. But, the more you fellowship, it's supposed to be better. It's supposed to be a positive thing. Keep you on your toes, accountability, as long as you don't fake it. But accountability and responsibility, starts adding to your plate. It just keeps you running a little bit better. So appreciate y'all, and I'll go ahead and pray out. And then y'all can enjoy the rest of your day or night. Dear Rabbi Yahuwah, we thank you for your blessings of understanding, your stores of knowledge, your fountain of wisdom, the springs of life that you've blessed us with today, to receive what you have for us, conversation, discussion, fellowship. Thank you for all the information that we have. I ask you that anything that I may have left out be revealed to everyone, and lead everyone in the way that you will into different types of research, but allow this to be very foundational um, overall. But I thank you, Yahuwah, for speaking through me in the name of Yahushua Hamashiach, that your voice uh, uh, is penetrating to all those whom are able to hear. And even if somebody didn't come to this specific study, that we pray that other people, your people, are receiving this information and understanding. And we just ask that you just continue to work your times, Abu Yahuwah, and that we do desire to return unto our home, but not with the sins of our fathers. So Yahushua Hamashiach, please continue to purge those things from us. Allow us to continue to humble ourselves before you, to become the elect posterity that we are, that we believe that we are, to make and as we're making our election sure in fear and trembling, we ask that you continue to keep us away from those whom are beasts that are truly not of you, to be able to see what is and what isn't true, that we may make good decisions and not become beasts ourselves, make beastly decisions. But that also, again, as the consummation continues to near, that there are different things that are going to continue to be put out there that are demonic, that are demons walking more often, are showing themselves more often. So we ask that you give us the spiritual eyes to be able to see what we need to see, the discernment in our ruach to be able to understand. We need to understand the truth, to break down the understanding, but ultimately build on the foundations of fear, wisdom, and righteousness. And that you continue to purge the sins that we have within us that continue to fight against us. These demons continue to use as strongholds and cycles to lock us into. I pray that we come to you, Yahuwah, as children, Albiah, and as the ones that truly have a heart for you, that we can see that you have written your Torah on their hearts, and that it's a part of what is coming as a new covenant that you will establish, Yahushua, when you return. So we ask that you just continue to forgive us for the things that we said, didn't say, thought about, didn't think about, wanted to do, and didn't do. Allow us to move forward and grow in the ways that we need to, Yahuwah. And we just really love you and thank you. And we ask all these things, confirm it into you, into your son, through your son, unto in the rock, unto you, Yahuwah, we pray. Yeah, amen.